we come now to one of the exciting visual arts. Remember, we have painting, we have sculpture, we have architecture. Now we have photography and digital graphics. What an exciting time to be living, because we are able to see what we have a tendency to take for granted, and that's many, many photographs, all kinds of images that are not only presented to us, but manipulated and used in order to get us to buy or to react or to behave. But we recall before, when we talked about art and its major function, in many cases it was used to teach religion. People could not read or write, and as a result, they used art, painting, and sculpture, fresco painting, back even in the Renaissance. They used sculpture, and they used high relief, low relief, and in some cases with the Greeks, they used drama to tell stories where their bodies and their activities would role play. But today, just around Abraham Lincoln's time, we saw the camera come into focus. We've seen men who put cloths over their heads and take these frames, and the flash goes off and almost explodes. Well, photography has come a long way since that time, and we are able now to look at photography and its history, which really began around 1838. We have photography, we have sort of divided it up into two categories: still photography and motion photography. And of course, the still photography really took off, as I said before, around 1838. And when we look at the question of what is time-based media, these are really film, but contemporary artworks that include film and slides and audio, things that are put together almost like multimedia. And today we use computer-based technologies to create activities and images and animation, all kinds of moving pictures. And collecting and preserving and exhibiting these kinds of technology-based artworks, we pose complex and technical challenges to all people who are trying to conserve these moments in time. Let's remember now that a photograph, even that photographic album you have at home, that is your history. You are recording life. You are recording, if you have a picture of yourself, you have recorded a second or 2 seconds of your life as we pull and deal with the shutter. We make sure that we capture it. And you've seen people go back and forth after a hurricane or after a catastrophe, a flood. They don't look for their furniture that's been damaged or the car. They look for those photographs that mean so much to their family history and memories. So when Muybridge started out challenging and looking at multiple pictures, he began to see that if he put the multiple pictures together, almost like we take a deck of cards and we move them. These were the original motional pictures, cartoons, Walt Disney. They work, and they employed people who drew pictures all day long, and then they would put them together into frames, which we call film. And you can find this on figure 12.1 of our textbook. But when we look back at photography, oh, how inspiring it has been. As I said before, it started just a little bit before the Civil War. And on the upper right there is an original photograph of Abraham Lincoln. And because of that photograph, we know that he was tall and he was thin and he was distinctive. And that hat brought him up to about 6'7". He stood as a tower around men that were near him. And of course, we see moments frozen in time of great photographers capturing the moment, capturing pictures to achieve the activity. So when we look at cinematography, we see that the film has been perfected to a point now that we can look at all kinds of histories. Matter of fact, the film called Lincoln is one I recommend for everyone because you can get not only based, and they say there have been some 3,000 books written about Lincoln, but when you look at the film, you see a dimension that is remarkable. This photograph in our textbook, figure 12-3, roadside stand near Birmingham, Alabama, it tells a story. It tells of people who have worked to put out a product that someone can sell. It shows how they weigh and how they move their product. They have fish fresh from the lake, and of course, these are the first implications for high time advertising. Now, advertising, and many people say anything that can be seen can be used as a basis of advertising. We've seen skywriters, we've seen all kinds of things. Wherever we see something, and particularly on our computer screens now, when we go and we click on a particular URL, we find that there's an ad that pops up. And of course, these are images and photographs and film and all kinds of manipulations to get you to buy. So there are many, many types of photography that the art appreciation students should be at least basically knowledgeable about. One is wildlife photography, and that can be fascinating. These are people who risk their lives in many cases, particularly in Africa. They're filming all kinds of wildlife, lions, tigers, elephant, and they come into quite a bit of danger. Photojournalism deals with the photos that usually are printed for the public. Fashion photography, they selling all kinds of styles and fashions, particularly in the Western aesthetic, where thinness is in. And we see big studios in Paris, and we see big studios in New York and in Rome and many places around the world, but the emphasis is on fashion. Sports photography, oh, how we enjoy seeing football plays or baseball plays or hockey plays or all kinds of sports photography that catch people leaping in the air. We have aerial photography where we look down from a plane. And I had a person several years ago, but he rented a plane and went around the neighborhood and took everyone's picture from an aerial point of view and came back and sold us quite a few photographs. I have a photograph of my house, from about 200 or 300 feet up. And of course, he used aerial photography. He did that in the military, so he decided to do it in his neighborhood. We have micro photography where we really get a chance to see images recorded that are very minute. We have event photography. Look what happened as crimes are committed, or even as events that captured police officers beating Rodney King and other such things. We call it event photography, and we can see through visuals. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Knew that if he could get the television networks to cover the marches in Alabama and from Selma to Montgomery. He knew if he could get the national media to focus their attention on the plight of African Americans and the difficulties of segregation, he knew if he could do that, that it would have a powerful impact. And so, last but not least, are a couple of types of photography, which I haven't even touched on the many types. We have interior design photography. We have advertising photography. Oh my, what about advertising photography, wedding photography, and of course, family history. That's the big one. That's the one that all of us participate in. And if you own a digital camera today, most likely, or if you own your phone and you're sending those JPEG images to your computer, you are taking pictures. You are recording history, not just at the football game, not just at the fashion show, not just to wrestle or in a basketball game, but you are recording your family history. And what a great thing it is. So this photograph that goes way back to 1843 is found in our textbook, figure 12-8. And we have this photograph is located at the National Museum of Photography. And it's called The Open Door. Look at the story that it tells, the room and the circumstances. You can almost feel the dryness of the atmosphere through the photograph. Look at this one on porch, how the light creates a mystery. You actually want to know what is going on here. Is this the ocean? What's going on in that room? What causes this subtle, warm feeling that we get from the light coming from the room? And then Battleship Potemkin is a very famous film created, one of the first motion pictures created, but it actually captured segments, close-up clips. In other words, instead of having the camera focus on the person for several minutes, it did short clips and created an activity that was remarkable in this Battleship Potemkin. It's exciting to watch it because what they do is come right up to the subject and give you these clips as they come back. So today, we're in an age of what is called digital photography. No longer do we use film as much. Some photographers still use film. They develop the film and they have dark rooms. But today, most of us who are familiar with Photoshop can Photoshop, or the computer becomes our dark room. And thus, we can put more light and more contrast, and we can edit photographs like never before. We can put people on layers where they look like they're talking to each other. And I'll show you a Forrest Gump example in just a moment. But today we're in this digital photography age. And I would advise you as an artist, as an art student, as an educated person, to buy a camera and keep it with your students. So now I'm so glad to see many of you using your iPads and your phone cameras in order to take lecture notes and record lecture notes. And then we can even see, in many cases, crimes against individuals recorded. We know today that there's a lot of, we have cameras for security purposes on buildings and in planes. And just about everyone today who goes out in the street and walks along, you're picked up by a surveillance camera that's either in a store or in a bank or in a supermarket or in a store. So digital photography has burst on the scene like never before. They're even talking about police officers wearing cameras at this stage. Now, photography can capture a warmth, and in this case, we have this film in 1995, but we see a photograph called The Greeting, and we can feel the warmth of this photograph. But as I told you before, today we use layered photographs. So in the film on Forrest Gump, what they did was took some footage from actual film of the late John F. Kennedy, and then they put him on one layer, and then they put Forrest Gump, so to speak, right next to him, but it was on a different layer. So you didn't see the layer. It's like putting two pieces of glass on top of each other, and one with one picture and one with the other, and made it look like Forrest Gump was communicating with John F. Kennedy. Now, this is just the beginning of what we call photo manipulation or Photoshop layers, and how we can take photography and create any mood we want. We can manipulate color. We can change the size of objects. We can manipulate images. We can take out blemishes. We can modify all or part of a picture. And we can put people in the picture. We can take people out of the picture. And so we have that power that comes from a software package like Adobe Photoshop. This one computer program has revolutionized photography. We can now take a photograph and edit it to a point where it looks like we want it to look, as opposed to how it actually is. We can put people next to each other. There are many people who make their money, have a picture of Ronald Reagan or President Obama or President Bush, and then they put the person next to that person. It looks like they're shaking hands, or he has his hand around his arm, his back. We can manipulate photographs now, and so that you're looking at what isn't necessarily true. And of course, this is something we have to deal with from an academic perspective. The film Jurassic Park in 1933, it's out figure 1247 in the textbook, and we see how we can manipulate images to create monsters, multi-sized animals, and monsters for film purposes. And of course, we can take all kinds of objects and put them into one photograph, and they never were. We just put them in like a collage, and look at this photograph that comes out of it. You can almost feel the gust of wind. It's called the sudden gust of wind, and fluorescent light is different. Matter of fact, I often tell my students when you go to buy carpet, you never buy carpet in the carpet store under the fluorescent light. You go and get a sample, and you take it home and put it under the light conditions in which it will be when it's installed in your home. I've known people who thought they bought red carpet. When they got it home, it was a brown carpet, because light affects color. So here we see a photograph where you can almost capture the wind, a sudden gust of wind. And of course, as we look into Japan, 36 views of Mount Fuji, we see an interpretation by a photographer of what is seen. So photography records life, and it records it in its actual time and in its realistic time and over a period of time. And I suggest that you all own a digital camera.